Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Stamperia Sunflower Art mini album tutorial series designed for Scrap and Create. If you are just joining me in the tutorial series, there is a complete supply list video showing you all the products that you will need to make this project. However, you can also click on the links in the description box below for all of the products that are available on the Scrap and Create website. So check those links out, purchase those products, and follow along. In today's tutorial, we're going to begin decorating this center page here that is the top flap, and then we'll move on to the inside. I'm going to be using this 8x8 paper for my page. So first I cut this to 5 3/4 of an inch. Then I cut this bottom border strip off, and then I've trimmed this piece to 6 1/2 inches. I'm going to mark the center on the top of my piece and then use my decorative edge to cut this. So I will go ahead and line the center up and also the top edge of the die with the top edge of my page. Then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. From my yellow solid paper, I have one piece that measures 5 3/4 by 1 inch. And I have one piece that measures 5 3/4 by 1/2 inch. On this 5 3/4 by 1/2 inch piece, I'm going to need to mark this in the center and then use my die on this edge. Now it's a very tiny piece. It's going to go down here. So just be patient. It is super, super tiny. Line up the top edge with the die and the center, and then I'm going to run this through the die cutting machine. I'm going to apply this piece down here and make sure that when I place this, it will be just tucked against this edge. So you need to make sure that it's the right size. If your piece is a little too big, just go ahead and trim on the flat side so that it is the correct dimension. This 1 inch piece is going to go here, tucked into the pocket, like this. And then this piece will go here in the center of the flap. From this 12 by 12 paper, I have cut one piece to 8 1/4 by 8 inches. Then I cut this to 4 inches, and this one will be 4 1/4 inches. For the bottom piece, we need to use the ruler and mark in the middle on the top, and then we will use the decorative edge, lining up the top of the die with the top of the page, and then centering this first little curve part with the center of the page. I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine, then I'm going to move this to cut the other section. These pieces are going to go here and here, and then I'll come back and add my closure and we will make this a pocket. Now that I have my papers on, I'm going to flip this down. I have cut 2 lengths of my satin ribbon to 12 inches. I've measured up from each side from the bottom 1 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to add ribbon on each side. That will be the closure for my entire page. So I'll just place about 1/2 inch of ribbon. And then I'm going to take my adhesive right down the edge of my page. Make sure that you catch the tips of the die cut edge so that they are adhered down to. Then close that pocket up and burnish these sides down. Make sure where the ribbon is that you go over it really well so that it will be completely adhered down. From this 12 by 12, I've cut this to 6.5. Then I cut this to 4 3/4. Then I cut this into 2 pieces that are 3 1/4 by 4 3/4. One's going to go here and one is going to go here. From the 12 by 12 paper, I've cut a piece to 3.5 by 5 3/4. Then I cut that to 2 pieces that measure 1 3/4 by 5 3/4. Now for the piece with the band at the top, we are going to need to mark in the center and then use our decorative edge die on the top to cut this. So I'm going to line it up, the edge of the die with the top of the paper and then in the center, and then run this through my die cutting machine. I've also cut one piece of the red cardstock to 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. From the 12 by 12 paper that had the cut apart cards on it, I've cut these 2 cards. Then I have trimmed around the cards. So I cut these, they are 3 1/4 by 4 3/4. So each of these had this little dotted border. I cut right down there. I cut the bottom border strip off, and then I cut this so that it measures 4 3/4 inches. Now I'll either use my fussy cutting scissors or my craft knife. And what I'm going to do is go in here and cut around all of this and around all of this, but I don't want to damage this piece. So I have to be very careful how I cut this because I'm going to put these on my flaps, but I'm going to make them frames so that this is open and the photos will tuck behind it. But I'm going to glue this piece actually onto the flap too, so that whenever there isn't a picture, it still has the pretty paper. I'm going to start with my die cut piece, placing it here at the top of my page. Then my photo mat or my red paper is going to go here in the center. And then the other green floral paper is going to go down here at the bottom. Now I have the framed piece. I'm going to take the middle part out first. I'm going to place this one here, but I'm only going to add my adhesive to the edge so the photo will slide from the top. So none on the top edge, and just a little bit of adhesive around the left, bottom, and right edge. Then I'm going to center this on my flap and adhere that down. Once that's adhered down, I'm going to make sure that nothing is shifted funny and that that piece will still fit. And now I'm going to make sure that the edges of this are covered with glue. That way, whenever it goes down, there's nothing sticking up for the photo to catch on. Then I'm going to place this here. And I'll take my bone folder. If I can get this up, there we go. I want to make sure that this piece, there we go, is underneath the part that's cut out. So now I'm going to take my spatula and just lift this so that that part is behind. And if you're doing this at home, rotate your book. It's much easier, but as I'm on camera, again, everything is a little awkward for me. It'll be much easier for you if you can see this better, so don't do it how I'm doing it. Turn your book so that it's in front of you. So now that photo will slide right into that frame. Could have also put acetate on here to make that an actual frame, but this will work too. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other side, placing this down and then this in the center. And it might actually be easier to place this down and place this around it. So I'm gonna try that out and just see. Or you can just do it the way we just did the last one. So I'm going to be very careful and hold this in place where I want that to be. Lay this down, and then I will lift this off the page and then press this down. Now I will take this piece and add my adhesive along the sides and the bottom, leaving that top portion open. And it does seem like it was a little bit easier to do it that way. So that might be a good way to try to do this. Now we'll flip these closed. And from the card pack, I have this card here and then this card. I'm going to place these in my pocket here for now. We might come back and add more later. I might add one of the tags or something here later too when we come back and do some embellishing. For now, I'm going to close this and then I'm going to tie my ribbon into a bow in the center to close my page. Then we're going to begin working on this spread here. I have my 8x8 paper here and I have cut this from the bottom measuring up 7 3/4. So I cut 1/4 of an inch off the top, then I cut this in half so I have 2 4-inch pieces. These are going to go here on the front of each of these flaps. So I'm just going to place these here now. Kind of where they're going to go. There's going to be a very tiny border on each of these inner sides and a little bit larger border on the outside edges. From my charm pack, I have my sunflower and I have my butterfly. I'm going to place my sunflower right above where my daisy is so that it kind of looks like it's part of that pot. And then I have my butterfly and I'm going to place it up here. Now, if you don't like the look of this, you can do these like this next to each other this way, but I'm going to put mine here. And I'm going to do a policy envelope closure that's going to kind of go looping back and forth to hold my page closed. So you want to decide where you are going to place yours, and then you're going to mark in the hole where you want each of your pieces to be. I have 2 brads and I have a piece of my embroidery thread that is about 20 inches long. So first, what I'm going to do is pierce my holes down through my paper. For the sunflower, I'm just going to insert my piece down, or my brad down through that hole, and then I'm going to insert that down through the hole in the paper, and then open the prongs up onto the back side. Now I'm going to press that down to open those prongs fully. So I have my first piece on the paper. For my butterfly, I'm going to place my brad through the butterfly and then place this down through the page and open my prongs. Then I'm going to take my embroidery thread. I'm going to loop this around my butterfly on the underneath. I'm going to loop it again and tie a knot in here. And I will double knot this one. Then I'm going to press my butterfly down and I'm going to clip that end of that knot. So now I should be able to go around my sunflower and my butterfly with my thread to close my page. Now we can trim this to be as long or as short as we want once it's on the page. So I'm going to bring my page in and apply these to the front of those pages. Once my pages are on my book itself, I've got my little palette with the brushes piece that came in my little baggie of charms, and I'm going to thread this onto the end here. And then, I'm going to tie this in a knot as like a dangle for my charm. So then I can loop this back and forth, or I can loop it just around. So however I would prefer to do it, and then this will hang down. You can also take this and just loop it regular. Like that. From the 12 by 12, I have cut the bottom piece here. I've cut one piece to 1 inch by 8 inches, and I've cut one piece to 1/2 inch by 8 inches. I'm going to glue one here to this spine and one here to this spine. From my 8 by 8 paper, I'm starting at the top, cutting a piece to 4.5. Then I'm cutting a piece to 1.5, and the last piece is 2 inches. I'm going to set the top piece aside for now. We're going to focus on these two pieces. So I'm going to mark the center of both of these pieces. on the top. And I'm going to use my decorative edge die. Now you can use these and do the same thing that we have been doing, but I'm actually going to move mine up a little tiny bit just because I want a little tiny bit more room, and I'm going to do it on this piece. So this piece should be okay, but this piece is going to be just a little tiny bit too short. It won't look terrible if you do it the way we have been, but if you want a little bit more paper, you have to take your edge die slightly up over the top of the page. So once you have this adhered with your washi, if you look on the back side, the top of the die, the metal piece, where it's cutting is actually right at the top of my paper, and that's where I'm going to have it cut. So I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to stick my die here, and I'm going to cut this the same way. Starting with the large piece, this one is going to go here on the back of the page. Then the next piece is going to go here. And then the third piece we will place here. And as you can see, even though I still tried to get a little bit more from my paper, there's a little tiny bit of a bigger border, but that's okay. It won't really be that noticeable. That's the nice thing about this border here, is you can move this down a little bit and it won't look too off. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere my papers down, then I'll come back and adhere my pockets closed. Once my paper's on, I'm going to go ahead and add my adhesive on the sides of the front pocket. And then close that one up. Then I'll open up the second pocket, add my adhesive down those sides. And then close that one. From the plain red paper, I have cut 2 pieces to 4 inches by 5 inches. And then from the 12 by 12 paper, I cut down here a piece that measures 4 inches by 5 inches. Then I cut that piece into 4 pieces that are 4 inches by 1 1/4. So I'm going to take one of these pieces for the top and bottom and put one of the red pieces in the center on both of these flaps. From the 8 by 8 paper, I cut the little blue truck. I'm going to place it down here and only adhere this bottom section. And then I've cut the house and I'm going to adhere it here at the top. So I'm going to make sure that only the part of these pieces that are on the cardstock are adhered down. And I'm going to place this so that only a small portion is above where the photo is, or the photo space is. That way it doesn't cover up a lot of what's happening, so that if there's a photo with a lot in it, or if it's a portrait, it's not covering up a lot of the photo itself. And I'll do the same thing with this one here, placing it almost all the way at the top. For my pocket, just for right now, I have this from the card assortment I'm going to place here. And then I have my truck that I'm going to place here. And then I have my tag that I'll place here too. We will come back later in one of the final videos, like before I mentioned, and we'll add more to these once we have everything covered and we have the extra paper. So for now, I'm going to leave this page as is, and I'm going to take my closure wind this around here and hook that closed. So that's it for this tutorial. We have the entire upper flap finished, and in the next video we will move on to the bottom flap. If you have just joined the tutorial series, check out all the links in the description box below for all of the sunflower art papers and supplies that are available on the Scrap and Create website. See you in the next video.